I figured
I
if I
was
go with
looking
that.
for my towing life hat, and it was underneath my back pull hat.
I gave mine away.
Your towing
I
life hat?
don't have anyone anymore. I need to go order another one.
Hey everyone, I'm Brad from Calgary.
This is Sean from Cambridge, Ontario.
I'm Terry from Cornwall, Ontario.
Hey, this is Larry from Pitt Meadows, British Columbia, and you're listening to the Towing Life Podcast.
Welcome to the Towing Life Podcast, where the ditches are deep, the trucks are loaded, but the drivers are not. I am your host, TowManG, and as usual, I am joined by my co-host, friend, and former coworker, the man who's pretty sick today, Mr. PlainGuy.
What is going on, G? What is going on?
Oh, I'm pretty hyped for this movie review.
Yeah. No kidding. You were right in your intro. I am sick. I think it carries in my raspy of my voice. I promise I will do my best throughout this episode to make sure that I'm not coughing and hacking and everything else for the wonderful listeners to hear.
And whatever he doesn't do, I will have to edit around. So
Yeah, well, I'll try and make
between
things
you and
stop.
me, we should have a decent listening experience for you fine folks out there.
Well, I'll do my best to make your job a little bit easier because God knows when it gets a little complicated, you get a little confused. So it is a good time to mention before we get too far into the show. Questions, comments, concerns for the show, news upcoming, everything. You can find us by visiting www.towinglife.ca. You can email us at thetowinglife@gmail.com, or you can find us on Facebook at the Towing Life Podcast. And if you're watching over on the YouTube side, don't forget to hit the like, comment, subscribe, bell, notify. I don't know, every button you can find on YouTube. I don't know enough about it. Go ahead and click it. Just make sure if you're going to give us a thumbs down, you hit it twice to really let YouTube know how you feel about us. So, that being said, as for news upcoming, we did put out a social media post, which would be last week at this point, talking about the upcoming 2023 American Towman Exposition being held in Baltimore, Maryland. Slight change of plans. We really didn't talk about it much on the show or have any plans, but I will be making my way down to Baltimore for the tow show. Mr. TowManG is going to stay back and hold down the fort on the business side of things. Maybe get some extra editing done, different things like that. So if you want, we will be bringing some Towing Life t-shirts down to the show. How to get yours is head over to our Facebook page, the Towing Life at the Towing Life Podcast on Facebook, where you will find a link that I'll also put in the description on where you can pre-order your t-shirt. We are only doing a pre-order. We are only bringing down the shirts that we were selling. We won't have extras, chances are, at the show. So be sure to head over, get your pre-order in, and get yourself a Towing Saved Me from Becoming a Porn Star. Now I'm just a hooker t-shirt.
You said that very weird.
I
It
was
looks
trying
better than
to
what he said it to
I
be.
was trying to remember. You'll see it down below on YouTube on the picture. It is a shirt that's available on our website. So head on over there. Head on over to our Facebook page. Find the link. I'll put it in this video as well as down on the description on the audio side. Get your t-shirt. We will be closing the pre-order on the 27th, which is the Friday after this airs, so that we have time to get them into our supplier, to get the shirts made, to get them packaged and brought down to you wonderful, fine folks. We haven't been able to do much for our American listeners, so the fact that we're getting a chance to go down there and give out some shirts, hopefully while we're down there, meet some people, you guys can show me what an American tow show is all about. So if you're heading to Baltimore, give us a shout. Email us at towinglife@gmail.com. Let us know, what are the things we need to see, not see. What should we avoid? Is there neighborhoods we should avoid? Is there events we should avoid? And restaurants. God knows I'm a big food guy. So if you can recommend the best spot to go, I am all ears.
I really wish I could come because you told me like 3 things that are happening that weekend, and one of them was skeet shooting. It's been a hot minute since I've got a 12 gauge out there and shot some clay pigeons. So yeah,
I don't think you can bring your own down, so that could be dangerous. You trying, but
crossing the border with a firearm is difficult, especially coming
cool.
back into Canada. So,
It's difficult but doable. Would you say the last time you went ski shooting is when we did it at your place?
no,
No,
I've done it after that. That was a long time ago, but no.
that was a very long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that was the only time you're actually up here.
Yeah, that was one of the few times. I've been to your property more than once, but that was
Oh,
definitely one of the handful of times.
yeah. And did we have the 270 out that day too?
The 30-aught whatever thing.
270, we were shooting targets at, I think, 300 yards or 400 yards.
We were shooting a gun out of the back of a truck that had a lot of muzzle flash. I remember that.
Yeah, that was the 270.
Yeah, that was the 270. I do remember
Yeah,
that.
laying down on the bed of a pickup, shooting at targets. It's always just the best.
It's a weekend at the TowManG convent.
Yeah.
It's a regular occurrence up there. So, I mean, he wouldn't let me shoot the peacocks. I remember that was I was quite offended by that. I really wanted to try and shoot a live target, and
Yeah, no.
we couldn't send the peacocks loose in the field and target
I'll give
practice.
you a 22 and you can start with a chipmunk.
Peacocks look easier to hit. They're pretty dumb.
Yeah.
I feel like I could get a peacock or two.
I'm sure anyone with a firearm could get a peacock or two.
So, that being said, we did promise last week on the show that we would get to a movie review, and that is what we are going to cover in
Thank
today's
you,
episode.
Joe, for bringing it to our opinion, or our opinion,
Our opinion.
our attention.
Does Joe always give you your opinion, or do you come up with your own sometimes?
No, I'm a pretty free form thinker. I can come up with my own from time to time.
No one else's opinion matters. TowManG said it first.
Yeah.
So yes, thank you.
His family's been in the towing industry since 1937.
Jesus.
Yeah, I'm just looking at some of our comments here on the YouTube side of things, and he sent us a comment a couple days ago. So, like I said, from Commie, Florida.
Commies, goddamn commies.
We don't have chasers. It's very illegal to do. So I was just curious, since you boys are up in the Great White North, I know there's a lot of parts that are probably, like you said, their version. Been in the towing industry literally all my life. Family started in 1937. He also says that he doesn't know why there's a bunch of letters in his name, but so I'll just call you Joe this time.
Oh, there's like extra letters in Joe's name.
Yeah, it's ST3ZG.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
Joe, you're like me and not very good at navigating YouTube. I'm going to assume you were lucky enough to be able to find us. So I congratulate you on that. I don't know how I'm using. I've commented from 3 different profiles. I have 7 different YouTube.
You have access to the Towing Life YouTube account.
And I can't figure out how to get into it. So I've gotten better, and I comment as PlainGuy. But yes,
Yeah.
I do not comment. Anyone ever commenting? That's what I hate about our Facebook page. I always feel the need on when I reply to comments or Messenger to write my name on it so that they know who it's coming from, because I don't
Half the time I see things, I was like, oh, am I on the right account? And then I like something, and then I realize, oh, I just liked our own post because I'm on the Towing Life account.
Oh, you liked our own post from our own page?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little self-serving.
I don't know, the thoughts there.
I'm having fat guy issues right now. My belt is cutting into me and it really hurts.
Oh, poor
I think everyone understands that struggle.
Yeah.
I mean, sitting down
I
all day.
laid down in bed last night, and the girlfriend's like, why are you laying down in jeans? You never lay down in jeans. I was like, I'm comfy. She's like, yeah, but it'd be cutting into your gut. I was like, it's not so bad when I'm laying down, okay? The gut kind of comes up and out.
Yeah.
It's a little uncomfortable. But
it's like boobies, right? You ever get a pair of those that when they lay down, they're just not the same. So it's like a gut. They don't lay.
They disappear into the armpits.
They disappear into the armpits.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Are we really gonna get into the conversation about pull-up bras if we push up bras? If not, can we please make sure we cover that one day?
So 22 chaser. Just get away from that. When we started, or when we talked about it the last episode, I was 30 minutes, I think, into the movie at that point. And I really had high expectations from the first 30 minutes. After finishing said movie, I realized it was a shitty Canadian made movie.
Oh wow. That's your honest review. Like, okay.
It's a low budget film.
Of course. Okay.
Don't expect high expectations of massively impressive visuals. or great dynamic storytelling. It's
Hold
just
on.
not there.
Hold your horses here for a second.
What?
For anyone that doesn't know, 22 Chaser is the movie review that we are doing on the show.
Yeah.
So first I want to ask you, TowManG.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to give this out of 10. What
Mhm.
do you give the movie out of 10?
As a tower, I would give it a 7. As just a standard person on the street, I would probably give it a 3.
Okay. So I'm a little bit different on that. As a tower, yeah, I would probably be right on par with you. I'm saying about a 7, seven
Yeah.
and a half.
Yeah.
As a regular person on the street, I'm still giving it a 5.5, 6.5.
Hmm.
I'm still giving it up there. I think there's still a decent story behind it, even if you aren't in the towing industry. You're right. It is a low budget Canadian made film.
Yeah.
That being said, right, it's got a good storyline. So for anyone who doesn't know, I've got the actual description of the movie
Mm-hmm.
and a quick review, and then we'll go over to a couple things into the movie, our thoughts, our ideas.
Yep.
22 Chaser is a Canadian movie released in 2018. One of the city's last decent tow truck drivers risks everything on a desperate quest to become king of the road and provide for his struggling family. Brian J. Smith plays Ben, an honorable tow truck driver in an industry where the competition races to the site of accidents, then misleads crash victims into overpaying for tows. When his boss dangles the promise of a lucrative contract with the police, Ben borrows money from a loan shark to keep his truck on the road. He has to consider violating his code of ethics to pay back what he owes. So, Ben starts off, right, as a bylaw tow truck operator. He works for this company called, the movie called Jackrabbit Towing.
Yeah.
Those trucks are actually, I'm not going to say the name of those company, but we knew the name of that company. Like I've seen that company before.
Mm-hmm.
Whose trucks those are. So
I
Jack,
just something that ticked me off a little bit. The company he drives for is called Jackrabbit, and throughout the movie, you probably see about 10 to 15 different tow truck drivers for this company called Jackrabbit Towing. But everyone calls Ben, the main character, Jackrabbit.
yeah, that was a weird little weird spot
Yeah.
to that movie.
Like
I
if I work for Bill's Towing and I know you, I'm kind of like chummy with you, and I show up, you're not going to call me Bill. No, you're going to call me that dumbass TowManG or whatever.
Well, I like their dispatcher who answers the phone saying like, Jackrabbit Towing, where we hop right to it or something.
Yeah.
Corny
Yeah.
line. Okay, so anyways, he starts off as a bylaw guy,
Mhm.
barely scraping by, making ends meet. Right, he's got a wife, an old high school sweetheart, and a
Mhm.
kid. And they really put the emphasis. This kid pulls on your heartstring, where he keeps referring to them as welfare cases. Like they are the poor of the poor. She's getting food from the soup kitchen
Yeah.
or the food
Food
bank.
bank. Yeah.
Right. She wants to open up a restaurant, something like that. Like they've got big ambitions for the family, and he's just a lowly tow truck driver. They really put an emphasis on how poor he is as a standard, what we call standard tow truck operator.
Yeah.
Not
There
one
is
of
a couple of actors in this from Letterkenny, so that was kind of appealing to me.
Can we stay on part here? Jesus,
Okay.
we haven't even got to the past that part yet. There is, yes. They really put the emphasis on, you know what I mean? Like as if you cannot make a living as your
Mhm.
standard tow truck operator.
Yeah.
Right. So as this guy is trying to make a living, his boss tells them that they have scored a police contract.
Yeah.
Right. The deal is all but done. All we got to do is sign the contract, and the money's going to be rolling in.
Mm-hmm.
Right, for all these operators, and so much so that he decides to lease them all of their trucks.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, granted, they already have to pay for their own fuel,
Yeah, we've seen that early in the movie.
right?
Yep.
So they've already got to pay for their own fuel. You have to lease the trucks, and you have to start leasing the truck today, and the police contract doesn't start at least for another week.
Right. And you need first and last up front on the lease.
Yeah.
Because if not, you can go ahead and leave. I'll have drivers lining up around the corner to replace you.
Yeah.
So first thing we realize from this, yes, they're paying fuel,
Mhm.
and they are commissioned drivers.
Yeah.
Right. That is a debate we've had for a long time: the commission versus hourly.
Mhm.
Like, if you don't think that boss saying that we're going to lease you the trucks now because of the money coming in isn't a real world scenario that definitely owners of certain companies would take that approach to,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? Like that idea of I started this company for, you know what I mean? And I made all this money starting off as a driver too. The money's on the road, right? That's a
Yeah.
line they refer to all movie. The money's on the road.
Mm-hmm.
And started off as just a driver. We ran 24/7. Does that not remind you of a boss we used to work for? Well, you never worked for him.
Yeah.
But that was the same idea. And even the ones that we did, right? The husband, you knew the husband, he came up from the same kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not as unrealistic, this movie, as I would
Well, the premise.
hope. Yeah, as hope that it would be with how shitty it makes the towing industry look.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So like Ben, the main character, and his wife, girlfriend, whatever wife, I guess it is,
I think
she
they're married.
wants to be a chef, right?
Mhm.
So she's got like a dead end job being a waitress, and he's a tow truck driver. And now they've moved from up north or a different province to Toronto. So the cost of living is through the roof.
Yeah,
Now some of these bylaw tows are only paying like $60,
yeah,
right? So if he only gets one or two bylaw tows a day, yeah, he can't live off of that in Toronto, right?
yeah.
So you shot yourself in the foot. Now they've moved to Toronto to follow their dream. Their dream is in Toronto. They knew that coming in that they weren't going to be able to afford living there unless they made something happen, right?
Mm.
She's got dreams to become a chef. She wants to put herself through school. They've got a little kid who's turning 7 or 8, I think, in the movie.
Yeah, I think it was 8. I think it was his 8th
Yeah.
birthday. Yeah,
He's getting into fights, trying to stick up for his family because all the kids at school are picking fun of him, saying that his family's a welfare case or basket case, whatever. So you've got all these different avenues. You got the kid that's getting in fights. The Ben, the main character, or says, if you don't get into fights up until your birthday, I will buy you this new bike that you want, because they're
yeah.
making fun of him because he didn't have a bike, right? And
Kid would not let him borrow his bike
yeah, because he
because
was
he would
poor.
get bed bugs because he's poor. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So these are all real world scenarios that you can kind of run through in your head, like, okay, I can see something like that happening, right? So it kind of sets the movie up to be what some families are like, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Now, the way I approach this movie is like, okay, can this relate to guys who just pretty much only do roadside work as well, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Commission
And
driver, sure.
commission drivers, roadside work, it's not always guaranteed. And then you've got chasers, right? So it's really the movie kind of frames two sides of this, right? And you
Yep.
can kind of see how messy it can be jumping from one side to the other. And why, once
100%.
people are chasers, they don't really want to go and be roadside or bylaw or just the private company without the chance of chasing, because the money is so much better
Yep.
chasing.
That's what they emphasize,
Yeah.
right? They emphasize that chasing. I mean, they absolutely paint chasers in a disgusting,
Oh, 100%.
like they are the biggest of biggest douchebags.
So one of the opening scenes, I want to
Mhm.
dive in deeper on that, is so Ben gets a hook for a bylaw tow, car parked illegally. And as he's coming down the road, he sees an accident, a single vehicle accident, car versus cyclist,
Yep.
right? So he's driving down the road with his beacon lights on, towing a car, which is Toronto, so I can let it slide. He gets out, calls 911. He gets the police coming on their way, checks to make sure the girl's okay, makes sure that the gentleman in the car, which is on its side, is
Yeah, it
breathing.
was on the side. I don't know how you hit a cyclist and end up on your side, but okay.
Yeah. Anyways, probably swerve trying to avoid it, whatever.
Yeah.
So then a chaser rolls up as he's doing all this, and he comes out. The chaser walks over to the car, starts talking to the guy, says that she doesn't look so good, the girl
Yeah.
on the bike.
Yeah.
She might not make it. But if, like, as long as you make it worth my while, I'll tell the officer that I saw the whole thing and that she's at fault, right? Which just makes the guy in the car start freaking out, which anyone would if you're saying that I might have just killed someone,
Yep.
right? The chaser then starts walking back to his truck when Ben, our good guy hero, comes back over to the car after overhearing this conversation and slightly moves the car mirror on the ground to let the driver see the girl on the bike is up and doing fine. He then says, "She's doing fine. I have another truck here that can tow you. He's a lot better of a guy, not trying to screw you around." And he ends up going with Ben's buddy, who's also a chaser, but he seems to be the one of the better chasers in quotation marks.
Now, like that exact scenario, I could
Yeah.
see chasers playing out in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I've known a bunch, and
Mm-hmm.
I haven't even known the shadiest of shady. And I
Well,
have
shady
known,
to the point where they carry around a bottle of Kool-Aid or just a bottle of coolant and
yeah.
spraying it in front of their car, say, "Oh, it's not drivable because you got a coolant leak."
That was an old Montreal trick. I've never seen anyone actually do that personally, but that's what I mean. Like, we have both known from our area some shady tow truck operators,
Mm-hmm.
right? Right. And there's one that really rings a bell.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not even the shadiest of the shady.
No.
Like, he's not even and I could see him doing something like that,
Yeah.
right? Where he comes out and goes, hey, man, I know you're at fault. This is bad. Like, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Make you a deal. You let me hook up your car. I'll get you set up with a good body shop, and we'll get into that part next.
Yeah.
In return, I will say that I witnessed the whole thing,
No.
and you were not at fault.
No.
I mean, it's not the craziest plan I've ever heard come out of what, I mean, chasers, we're not calling them dumb. We're just
No.
calling them assholes.
Yeah.
So like, they're not stupid people. So they come up with some pretty, so like, that's what I mean. You see things like that, and people watching that movie who are not in the towing industry
Mm-hmm.
go, wow, that's really dramatic. And no, that's legit.
Yeah.
Like,
They'll
that
either
is,
go, "That's really dramatic," or they'll be like, "Is that how it really works?" And
yeah.
then hate all tow truck drivers.
Well, that's the fear we have, right? In the industry,
Right.
that's the fear we have, is that they will start to hate all towers because of something that's portrayed on just a sketchy few. So
Mhm.
yeah, no, absolutely. And so what that does is that leads into the movie. Ben starts to have it really shows his moral character,
Mhm.
right? He's more of a stand-up guy.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it starts the beef with the chasers.
Yeah.
Which, as being a roadside guy and a police contracted guy for a long time,
Mhm.
and having my fair share of run-ins with chasers, it was always fun.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I remember running into an incident where we had a chaser show up on a scene of an area where
Mhm.
it would be chaser controlled or patrolled.
Mhm.
And literally, and I hated this. I hate when accidents go to roadside, but just to throw a jab at him, seeing if they had roadside so I could tow the vehicle just so he wouldn't. So like,
Mhm.
these are again real hatreds that normally those two groups have against each other.
Yeah.
Right?
I've been in situations before where if you're the dominant company in the town and then you've got Joe Blow who's a one truck show, kind of shady, whatever, you only give him enough rope to hang himself with, right? And whatever he does with that rope is to his own devices, but time after time, that driver will always keep hanging himself in that
Yep.
theoretical sense because the lack of judgment, the poor judgment,
Yep.
the crawling into an ambulance to try to seal the toe for him.
Yeah.
Like
Handing
shit like
business
that
cards out to
happens.
people that are clearly bleeding before paramedics or fire or anyone has even addressed them or arrived on scene. Yep.
Yeah. Where when I show up, and I'm sure you do too, I don't say this is your best option. I say you've got two or three options, right? Pros and cons to this one, pros and cons to that one, and we can take it to your house and hopefully have decent neighbors and they won't call the bylaw on you,
Yep.
right? This one costs you money, this one costs you money up front, this one shouldn't cost you any money up front because everything gets dealt through insurance,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Right. I've always told my guys, if
Yeah.
you have a vehicle that you know is at fault,
Mhm.
and you find out from them that they don't believe they have collision, don't bring
Don't
it to
push
the
it.
yard.
Yeah.
I don't want it to the yard, because
No.
all I'm going to do is just add storage onto a bill that is going to leave them out of it. So
Mhm.
yeah, so it really does highlight the two, and it shows the hatred. Not really the hatred. I don't think Ben at that point hates chasers. I think he's just trying to be a better person than chasers.
I think he does hate chasers because later on in the video, his son is hanging out with his buddy who's a chaser.
That's
And
his buddy.
the son,
He's trying to sleep with his wife, though.
yeah, I know. That's a different aspect. But the son says something about shitty chasers.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah,
And to the point where he would probably only hear that from his mom or dad.
yeah. That's fair. That's
Right.
fair.
So one of the parents despises chasers enough to where the son has picked up on different language
Yeah,
from conversations.
fair enough. So moving forward, so they get the company gets a promise of this police contract.
Yeah.
And the owner says that, first and last, money's due this week. Now, we know at this point Ben is already poor. They have done a very good job of establishing how poor Ben is,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, Ben couldn't afford the $300 bike,
Yeah.
which, hey, economy's tough. I wouldn't be surprised if people nowadays couldn't afford the $300 bike, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and we're talking, this is, 2018.
Yeah.
So, Ben needs to find a way to come up with money for this, right? For this lease payment.
Yeah.
First and last. So he goes to see a loan shark who his chaser buddy referred him to.
Yeah.
Now, the kicker is this loan shark also happens to be a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
Needless to say, like any good loan shark, Ben comes up short on some payments and leads himself to all kinds of trouble.
Yeah.
Right? Trouble that makes him make decisions throughout the movie that
Mm-hmm.
might not be the best idea. Right. So there is one, if you remember. So he shows up and he's arguing with a chaser on scene about being first available on a scene of an accident. Do you remember that one? It's a 2-car or a 3-car MBC.
Yep.
He's arguing like he's first up. It's when he first starts. He decides he's going to do a little bit of chasing on the side, make a couple extra bucks.
Yep.
And he
This
shows
is
up.
pretty late in the movie. So the movie's like an hour and a half long.
Yeah.
And it goes from very slow paced to very quick. A lot of things happen all at once in a very short manner. Right.
Yeah, they do a lot of leading up to it, and then everything kind of comes in all in one shot.
Mm-hmm.
But did you notice that the cop on scene, who that was? Now, I know we already talked about it. There's some Canadian actors in here from Letterkenny, but he was also
Isn't it the one actor from Kim's Convenience?
yeah, it's the father from Kim's Convenience. He's the cop.
Yeah.
The dispatcher at Jackrabbit Towing is from Letterkenny.
Yeah.
Who else was from Letterkenny?
His wife.
What?
His wife.
Who's his wife from Letterkenny?
So the in Letterkenny, you've got the native faction.
Yeah.
She's like the head of the natives.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then they actually have an intimate relationship between the lead actor of Letterkenny. Fuck, what's his name? Anyways, yeah.
Watch the show, but okay, cool. So yeah, a lot of Canadian actors that you've seen in other things,
Mm-hmm.
right? The dispatcher was also from True Bloods, I want to say it was called. It was a show my girlfriend used to watch back when.
Oh, okay.
And anyways, so that was just fun when I seen it. I'm like, hey, that's the guy from Kim's Convenience. Again, there's only a small pool of Canadian actors.
Yeah.
So it was nice to see them all in one movie.
Mm-hmm.
So Ben leads down the road and he gets into, so then he's into chasing. Now he's like, I've got to chase, I've got to make money.
Yeah,
right?
this is already at the point where the police officer broke his wrist
Yes.
because he didn't show up with the money.
Multiple times.
I
want to say at least twice before he broke his wrist, right? He gave him the option. Hey, ankle or wrist. Yeah.
And he did it in the place of business that he worked. In the parking lot.
In broad daylight.
Yeah.
Just slams his wrist into a door because he owes him money.
Yeah. So at this accident scene, Jackrabbit is first on scene.
Yep.
Or second because his other buddy's there. Right? The other chaser that just is kind of like the father figure, kind of, sort of. The mysterious man in the back. Anyways.
Yeah. That's fair. That's a good representation.
Right? So he gets there, he starts talking, or he doesn't even get to start talking because there's a guy bleeding and he kind of falls over on Jackrabbit's tow truck. So he just automatically goes and starts helping this guy, right, who's bleeding.
Because his instinct is to be a good dude.
Right. He's a good dude. He's a stand-up guy. And then this other chaser he's already had beef with for stealing that first truck shows up on scene and goes straight to the one girl who's already there. So now Jackrabbit has already stolen the scanners out of his other buddy's truck from the yard, right? And this is his night to make the money, right? He is chasing this night. He's now got to try to pawn off this guy and say, walk in that direction over to the EMS and get over to the only car that's available to be hooked, right? Which this other chaser that no one likes is already there.
Yep.
This guy kind of makes an ass out of himself, but he kind of forces this lady to say yes, kind of, sort of,
Mm.
which then Ben comes in and starts saying that, oh, well, you don't have to go with this guy. You have the right to choose. I'm a better guy. The cops then kick them off scene, right?
Well, he didn't really kick him off scene. He
He
told
said,
him
you
no,
got to
no
leave,
soliciting, no
right?
soliciting on my scene.
Exactly.
Didn't tell them to leave. Just told them they couldn't be soliciting the drivers involved.
As the same time this is happening, the chaser that no one likes says, I'm first on scene. I'm first on scene. Makes a big show saying that he was first on scene. Meanwhile, he wasn't. And the
So the cop,
cop,
Yep.
being preoccupied with what was happening in front of him, says, yep, you're first on scene.
I've
Right?
seen that exact scenario, for the record. I've seen that
Yep.
exact scenario happen
Yep.
where a second truck, because I never cared about first on scene, but I have pulled up on some that I was.
Mm-hmm.
And the second truck will sit there and argue. And not only will he say he's first on scene,
Mm-hmm.
if his buddy is there,
Yep.
he will say his buddy was second.
Yep.
Right. And so, yeah, this is the real thing. And the cops are dealing with accident, like cars everywhere. They're dealing with debris. They're dealing with traffic. They're dealing with people that are hurt. They're not paying attention to who's the first truck.
No, it's one of the last things on their mind is who's towing the shitbox out of here.
Yeah.
Right? So they kind of go back and forth. Jackrabbit eventually says to the lady, you have the right to choose who you want to tow. After this guy's already made an ass of himself and kind of bullied this chick into believing that she has to go with him.
Yeah.
And then she turns to the cop and says, is that true? I have the right to choose who to tow me?
Yeah.
He says, yes, ma'am, you have the right to choose. So she says, I'm going to go with Jackrabbit. Right?
Yeah.
So then they get into the truck and Jackrabbit starts going on about, well, I can hook you up with a body shop. I can't tell you where to go, but I can recommend this body shop. It's pretty good. And the chick just starts breaking down in the tow truck, which is understandable, right? It's a lot of information overloading, especially being in the middle of two guys fighting over her and her wreck.
Mm-hmm.
So that really pissed the one chaser off because now that's two wrecks. Jackrabbit has technically scooped from him. The first that he's actually scooped, and the second that he's pawned off on one of his friends.
So before you go a little farther on that, yes, 100%. The woman breaks down. I don't think it was because the guys were fighting over it. I think it's just the overall, we've been at accident scenes. It doesn't click in right away. And when it does, all of a sudden they are, people can be pretty broken up.
Yeah.
So that is normal. And like he says, he goes, I can't tell you where to bring it, but I can tell you where I'd bring my car.
Mm-hmm. Which is already still a character trait of a stand-up guy, right? He's leaving the option open. You're persuading into the direction you want to go, but you're still leaving the option open.
And why is he doing that? Because this leads into a second part of the dirty side of chasing. Not only does it involve the games that they play on scene to secure tows, right? Nobody can understand when the wars were happening in Toronto. A lot of people outside the industry would go, like, it seems crazy that they're, burning trucks and shootings and everything like
For
that.
what, $1,000 maybe?
$400, $500 tows, maybe $1,000 with storage, everything else. What no one realized, at least the general public, and I think there's part of the industry that, if you didn't live through these areas, didn't fully understand it either. There was more to it than just that. There was kickbacks from body shops, right? So body shops would give you, and their numbers were low because I want to say they were 10 points. When what points are is there a percentage of the repair bill that they would pay you out in cash. So if you brought them a $5,000 repair bill, right, $5,000 worth of damage, they would pay you $500 in the movie. Now, I've heard of body shops going up to 20, 25 points back in the heyday of corruption. Right? Like, I remember it got so bad to the point that guys were posting on social media I remember getting into a huge fight over that, where a guy was posting social media of like a Lamborghini and
Mhm.
some shop offering him 22 points
Yeah.
and going like that is like the shitty spot that our industry has got in, when this is literally, we can like openly discuss. It was always like kind of a well-known secret
Yeah.
in Toronto, and I'm not sure if this happened in the States. I'm assuming it does.
Mhm.
But in Toronto, for sure, this was a well-known secret. And so that's what it is that you start talking about $20,000 repair bills,
Yeah.
and you start talking about 10 points on that. That's $2,000. And that's not like you're getting commission on $2,000. Like, that is $2,000 cash in your pocket.
Yeah.
So now you've got the commission, because we know these guys are commission drivers,
Yeah.
commission for the MVC. And they
Mhm.
talk about it, right? That's another 150 for dollies. That's
Yeah.
another this and this and this and this and this. And these guys are paying their own fuel. They're
Mhm.
brokers. They're obviously leasing their truck. These are high percentages that they're paying. They need to get that money back.
Yeah.
And there's zero regulation at the time, right? This was
Mhm.
before a lot of regulation came out.
Yeah.
So, and then on top of that, money that they're generating from that accident, they're pulling in not only from body shops,
From
right?
chiropractors, from
Chiropractors,
physiotherapy, because in
rental
that,
cars.
so
Rental cars was another part of the industry that I don't think a
yeah.
lot of people knew about. Rental
Yeah.
cars.
So in this actual scene, it takes place, which I find, I was completely dumbfounded. This gentleman who runs this body shop is open at like midnight, and he's the only guy there.
That's not
The
uncommon in Toronto.
Yeah, I guess. But the doors open, the truck pulls right in, and he's dropping it inside this bay, which that's a little weird too, but whatever. Um, so he's obviously dropped off the lady who he's towing, and he's arguing over how many points he gets. He
Yep.
says the body shop says, I'm only giving you 10. He's like,
Yep.
well, you normally give everyone 30, right? Well, who did you hear 30 points from? Then he says so and so. He says, listen, I could only give you 30 points if it's like a BMW or a Lamborghini or something like that. But if you're really hurting for cash, and he pulls out a business card for a physiotherapy, convince her that even though she might not need it tonight, she
Mm,
might start hurting in another couple of days.
mm,
And when she does, to call this guy
yeah,
and make sure to make sure she mentions your name,
yeah. And that'll be
right?
another 10 points.
No, that will be 30 points. They pay
Oh,
30 points all the time on that
oh
or
wow.
whatever.
Yeah.
Um, And
Well,
then at that point, after that's all said and done, the chaser that no one likes rolls in. Um, they have a heated debate
I don't
with
think it was much of a debate.
no, it was more so of a beatdown, and
Yep.
Ben ends up on the ground with a black eye and blood coming out of him. But he also gets a pep talk from this mysterious father figure
Mhm,
saying, I would much rather you around here than him.
mhm.
Um, he's a much he's more of an animal and you're more civilized. But in this uncivilized society, you have to become uncivilized to um, become the best. I think it is.
Oh, yeah, to survive, right?
Right.
You cannot get, and that is a real statement that he gives. You cannot
Mhm.
get into chasing. Like, I've dabbled in chasing, nowhere
Mhm.
near. You can't do it unless you're willing to be like, you can do it, but you can't really do it. Like, you can't just be a chaser.
Yeah.
All you do is chase without losing your moral compass. I
If
don't
you need to make
believe,
a living off of 100% chasing, you have to be, I don't want to say a complete douchebag, but
but pretty goddamn close.
you got to have at least 50% of the ability to be a douchebag.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I've always told people is, yeah, the money's not the best doing roadside or whatever,
Mhm,
but at least I can go to bed at night knowing that I'm not intentionally screwing anyone over.
mhm. Yeah. No, it's true. And it's hard to do that while being a chaser 100% of the time. So
Yeah.
yeah. So anyways, our wonderful friend, which I wish I didn't write his name down,
No, me
the
neither.
chaser that nobody likes, as you like to refer to him, lays an absolute beat down into bed.
Mhm.
Asks the body shop owner how much money he paid him for the car.
Yeah.
Takes that money plus $20 in gas for
Yeah.
making him chase him, and leaving Ben again broke
Yeah.
and beaten up, because now he's got his broken wrist. I think he already had his broken wrist at this point. I can't remember.
Yeah.
And now, probably some cracked ribs and a black eye and a fat lip, which he has to then go explain to his son,
Mhm.
who is very disappointed in him because Dad told me not to fight, and Dad got in a fight.
Yeah.
Right? So Ben's life is starting to spiral a little bit out of control. He owes money.
Yeah.
His wife is upset with him.
Yeah.
His friend, who he
His
thought was
son
his
says,
friend.
I don't want to talk to you. I only want to talk to mom.
Yeah.
Kicks,
His
screams him, like he
yeah,
just wants him to leave.
his
And
friend's
then,
trying to sleep with his wife.
yeah,
He
it
owes a
turned,
cop loan shark money.
yeah. Now his other chaser buddy, throughout all this, his friend,
Yeah.
has been getting closer to his wife and says, "Oh, well, I could give you the $5,000, right?"
Yeah, to get them
Um,
out from underneath this debt they owe the loan shark.
exactly, and which is throwing another monkey wrench into all this because he's thinking, well, if my wife takes the $5,000 from him, he's going to want to steal her away because I can't provide for my own family, and
Mm,
that's a big thing. Of I know for men,
mm.
if you can't provide, then you're not a man, right? That's a big mindset a lot of guys get into, and they value themselves on how well they can provide for their family,
Fair enough. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which is the mindset. If you don't have that, then you as a species wouldn't have reproduced and got to where we are today as a society. Anyways, so during that interaction, she then goes, the wife goes to see this guy in his IROC, I think it was, which was kind of funny. Um, and he gives her a check for $5,000. He tries to get pretty handsy with her.
Mm,
She kind of rejects it, and then the screen cuts back to where she lets him kiss her. So we don't know what happened.
mm.
She's then walking back to the house. And like I said, this all takes place within one night, which is very confusing because a lot of things happen within this one night.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. It's a very hectic night.
yeah. So they meet back at the house, and she says, well, if I just slept with him, all our problems would be over, but I didn't sleep with him, right?
Mm.
I didn't take the money, I didn't sleep with him. So now Ben has to go back out onto the road, and he goes to the his loan shark, which is this police officer.
Yeah.
Um, Says, "Listen, man, this is what's going on. I'm sorry. I just once we get this police contract, I'll pay you back in full with interest. Yada yada yada." And the officer says, "You're not getting the police contract." Says that, "Oh well, the owner of the company, the trucks aren't actually in his name; they're in his wife's name, and his wife has some shady past,
So
doesn't
I
qualify
don't know if
for
you
it."
clued into that. So the wife didn't actually have the shady past. She did, according
Mhm.
to the records, but it
Yep.
was all his business. He was running
Yep.
his business under his wife's name, probably for tax purposes, probably evading whatever he was doing.
Mhm.
And um, yeah, so she must have gotten charged for some shit he did back in the past, which wouldn't
Yep.
normally be a problem,
Mhm.
right? The officer tells him, but because the trucks are all registered in her name,
Yep.
he ain't getting the police contract. So now
Yep.
all this money that Ben is out,
Mhm.
all of these decisions Ben has made
Yep.
are gone out the window.
Yeah. So you've got a broken man who's desperate. Like he's broke. He's can't come back up with the $5,000 plus interest to pay off the loan shark.
Yeah.
He's late now on the payments on his truck that he is leasing because apparently we just jumped ahead like a week or two
Yeah.
before this night.
Yeah.
Anyway, um, the police contract, which was this holy grail off in the distance that you can almost touch it, is gone. That's gone.
Yep.
His
Yep.
wife is planning on leaving him. There, like, there's just so much shit going on. He
Yep.
then decides, you know what? I'm going to stoop to their level. He goes and he goes into his back shop. He goes back home, goes into his back shop, grabs
Yep.
a 2x4, drails a couple of nails into the end of the 2x4, and he goes to the spot where the chasers sit. And this guy that just beat him up, the chaser that no one likes,
Yep.
who is going on a rant, not at this part in the movie, I don't
Yes.
think,
Has gone on a rant about his new tires that he
that he
put on.
wants to have sexual intercourse with. And he's coming up with a whole design in his basement and he wants to make it romantic. And that is where I really started to get like, okay, I get that you're trying to show chasers in a negative light, but now you're just showing that they're like fucked in the head, like
You
mentally.
you clearly haven't spent many nights out drinking coffee with chasers, because I'm not gonna lie, those conversations aren't that far off. They're not. I'd love to say they are, but they're not that far off. It
Okay.
might not be about his tires, but a lot of them want to make love to one or another part of their tow truck. Um, so I'm not even kidding.
But anyways, he made it sound like he was serious in this conversation.
Well, it probably
Anyways,
was.
probably we'll see. Anyways, maybe part 23 Chaser, the sequel. Um,
Probably.
maybe they'll come to fruition. Anyways, so Ben gets out, smashes in the tires, like pops a couple of tires, beats the hell out of them with this 2x4. And then something comes over the scanner. So the mysterious father figure and him start racing. And I mean racing. He's pushing this 6-liter gas tow truck, which you can see in the picture, to its absolute limits. And the mysterious man
With his
chaser,
single rear wheel 25 or 3500.
yeah, Duramax by the looks of it,
Yeah.
which should smoke the
Yeah.
six
And he's
liter
like,
1-ton
with
dually full wrecker with a
yeah.
sling on the back day after day. But apparently he passes the Duramax. And when he passes the Duramax, they come through this intersection and a cabbie T-bones this Duramax, which then just so happens to morph into a 2003 Chevy 1500 with its all smashed in door.
Oh, really? I never noticed
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Oh,
you can it's a dead giveaway from the interior, the mirrors, like it's a completely different truck after the accident,
yeah.
which that really threw over the top of this is a cheap movie.
That's you being a dickhead.
That
I
is
didn't
me
notice
being a
that.
dick.
I didn't notice that. Your
But like
general listener, don't listen to TowManG. You won't notice.
I'm the same person when I'm watching a TV show and they're in a Suburban because it's a cop show and you can see the shifter in park. That ruins my immersion
Yeah, okay. So
because
yeah,
they got that massive shifter and you like it would be down and drive and you shouldn't be able to see it in the shot. Anyways, so this cabbie gets into a wreck with the father figure, mysterious tow truck driver,
and absolutely like
like
devastates this truck.
destroys this
Yeah.
truck and
Which
car.
is kind of surprising, but okay.
Yeah. Um. So then Ben, he's on his way to a wreck, looks in the rearview mirror, puts the truck in reverse, doesn't turn his beacon lights on because now he's backing down this road, backs up to the wreck, gets out. As he's walking up, he looks at the cab and
Oh,
this
it's
chick,
clearly visible too that the driver smoked the windshield and is
yeah,
probably
there's blood all over the smashed windshield. The passenger in the cab gets out the back door, looks at Jackrabbit, and then runs away.
yeah,
Just shock, runs. Realizes that the cab driver is no longer a person,
yeah,
walks around to the passenger side of the fuck truck to
yeah.
where this other chaser is, looks in the window, or opens the door, I think, realizes that he's really not in good shape. And all this time, Jackrabbit has his phone in his hand with 911 dialed. He looks at the guy, doesn't say anything to him. He's like barely conscious. And he reaches into the truck, picks up his cell phone, dials 911, and sets it on the dash of the truck while he's bleeding profusely, barely clinging to life, closes the door and walks back to his truck to head on to that wreck that he was originally going to.
So do you know why he did that?
Because the opening scene, he stopped and he called 911.
And he hung
Which,
around and had to give a statement and everything else, and
yeah,
his dispatch got mad at him and said he spent all day on that one call
yeah.
because he
And
had to give a
he
statement.
didn't even get paid for.
Yes.
He didn't even get paid for that one call, right?
So yes, his buddy, who's not really his buddy, the guy was kind of the guy was an alright guy.
Mentor.
Yeah. Dies chasing. And I don't know if you heard later on, the cop tells him it was actually two people that died in the cab. It was the fare and the driver, and the
Mm,
fare's
yeah,
girlfriend said she saw a Jackrabbit towing truck.
yeah.
So there's
So,
three
anyways,
people died in this MEC. Yeah.
yeah. Ben then goes, picks up this BMW that you don't see anything of. You just see him coming into the body shop with a BMW, or is a Porsche. I think it was a Porsche.
Something, yeah.
Gets
And
paid
collecting his money.
his $500 or whatever it is. Then he decides, you know what? I'm going to call my boss's wife to pick her up and say your husband's cheating on you. And if I show you where he is, you need to sign me over this truck, which she doesn't really care,
Because the
right?
truck's her name, yeah.
Exactly. So the only part that you actually see is him rolling up in front of this house with this random girl in the passenger seat. She signs a little piece of paper and gives it to Ben, and then walks into the house with her phone videotaping, and a girl answers the door in her bra with big tits hanging out. And so then you got to kind of put that together at that moment.
What do
Because
you mean? We put it together.
the next day, Ben comes in to work. His boss says, "You're done, you're fired, you're whatever." And he says, "Well, actually, I own my own truck." Shows him the paperwork of his wife signed over the the title,
Yeah.
and says, "This is the Rex that I brought in. You need me. You have to need me, because that cop that I originally borrowed money from is now working for me, and he's beating up your other chaser out there."
He's beating the shit out of his buddy,
Yeah.
so-called buddy.
Who tried to sleep with his wife.
Tried to
Yeah.
sleep with his wife and breaking his wrist,
Yeah.
and explaining to the owner of Jackrabbit Towing that you now need me, and
Yeah.
I am going to be your only chaser.
Mm-hmm.
And is that clear? And everything else, and that's kind of how the
The movie wraps up there pretty much, other
yeah,
than he goes and buys a bike, takes
yeah,
it to his kid's birthday party, shows him the bike, he sits on the kitchen or on the picnic table outside,
there's in his
starts
truck.
to eat his cake, and the scanner goes off in his truck, and the movie fades to black.
Yeah. So, like I said, it's a long, slow burn up, and then
Yeah.
everything happens real quick.
Yeah.
And the timelines are kind of hard to keep up with and everything else. But the reality is, like I said, I give this movie a solid 7.5.
Mm-hmm.
It is, first of all, it's the only movie that I've ever seen that is solely dedicated to tow truck drivers.
Yeah. And towers, whenever you see a movie, oh, there's a tow truck. Hey, he's doing that wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
How many
In
times
the
have you
show,
seen
whatever.
somebody post a CSI episode with a tow truck? Go, whose truck was this?
Yeah.
Right. So this was a movie. If you have not seen it, 22 Chaser. I ordered it on Apple TV.
Yeah.
You can get it through a couple places with free trials. I think
I
it was
did it
available
through Stack TV, I think it was.
I
Through
found a
Amazon.
website that had it for free with ads every 15 minutes or 30 minutes or
Yep.
so. It's not a very long movie.
No.
It's all, like we said, exclusively filmed in Toronto.
Mhm.
Like I said, the kickback side of it's real. The chasing and like I said, they overdo it.
Yeah.
100%.
Mhm.
And that stupid tandem drive Rattler
Oh,
truck.
yeah.
This thing is the ugliest thing in the world.
Yeah.
That was back when
It
it had.
still drives around Toronto, or at least
Oh
it
yeah,
did a couple of years ago.
that's when it had its ugly wrap too. Like it's a
Yeah.
little nicer now, just like a one color truck, whatever it
Yeah.
was. No, it definitely shows the dirty side of towing. I
Mhm.
think as a tower, for the most part, like I said, the general public, yeah, you're right. You probably give that I think I give it a 5.5, 6.5 for the general public, seven and a
But
half.
it didn't have a happy ending.
No,
It
which is
was not
great.
a happy ending. You had this good guy
Yeah,
got completely demoralized and beat down and beat
yeah.
up from the towing industry and turned into this monster who
Which I
left
think is
his
what happens to people in the
friend-ish to
industry.
die all because of towing.
Which I think happens in the industry.
Oh, it does. It 100% happens in the industry. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that, but as an outsider looking in, if I'm not a tow truck guy and I see and I actually pay attention to this movie, I'm never going to want to become a tow truck guy if I think anything of these movies are somewhat real, right?
Right.
Plus, then you watch this movie in 2022 or 2023, and you've already seen all the headlines in the
Oh yeah.
news.
Oh, this predated some of these
Yeah,
headlines.
this is all predated. You
Yeah.
then realize with all these headlines, this movie is more accurate than what most movies are. You're like, towers are they're either decent for now or they're all going to be shitbags in another couple of years. I don't want to break down. I am only going to exclusively do through Roadside and Roadside alone. Regardless if I get into a wreck, it's only going to be Roadside because they're all out to get me. And even
No,
the good ones might be out
general
to get
public
me.
doesn't watch this movie and think that that is all real. For the record, the
But
general public doesn't watch I don't care if they've seen the headlines. The general public is smarter than you and I
eh,
and knows the reality of the thing. No,
I don't know. Have you ran into a truck with flashy lights on it?
yeah, no, I've definitely ran into people who think that we're all the same, but that's mainly because of the news headlines and everything else, not because of a movie.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that being said, we are starting to run long on this. It was a lot of rambling. I recommend you see the movie yourself. I definitely recommend the movie if you're in the
Yep.
towing industry. I
Yep,
recommend the
yep.
movie. Go check it out. 22 Chaser, which
Mhm.
ironically was his unit number. We find out like right at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious that they've held on to that name for the title for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And if you really want to, watch the movie, have a talk about with it, remember, I will be in Baltimore at the American Towman Exposition. How to remember the name of it. Coming up in November. If you want to order your t-shirt, Towing
Yep.
saved me from becoming a porn star. Now I'm just a hooker.
Yep.
Head over to our Facebook page at the Tow and Life Podcast.
Or
on
bleep
Facebook.
bloop it down below in the comment section of what
Or bleep
you
bloop it
think.
down below. Maybe we'll share a link to where you can find the movie. I'll put it on Apple TV or something like that so that you can have a spot if you're like me, you don't want to look too hard. Be sure to check it out. If you guys know of any other movies that maybe we should talk about, whether it be maybe a show, it's a little shorter, 30-minute episode of a show that covers something of it or something we're missing out on the media side of towing, be sure to let us know either in the comments down below or email us at thetowinglife@gmail.com.
It's not going to be an every week thing.
No.
So
It's just something we wanted to talk about.
yeah, give us submissions. If we get to it in the next month, we get to it in the next month. If we get to it within the year, we're doing good, I think.
Hell, this movie came out in 2018 and it took us 5 years to be able to do a review on it. So,
well, we didn't have a podcast for the first couple of years of that. So,
minor details. So, on behalf of myself and my wonderful co-host, Mr. TowManG, we thank you for joining us for another week of the Tow and Life Podcast, and we cannot wait to see you again next week and see you at the show. Take care.
toodles.